right, friends, this is the last of the knowing circuit, if you've been following along as it's laid out here in the self-mastery movement. This is the channel of structuring. This is the design of individuality. What is structuring? It is one knowing at a time that literally builds the mutation. One knowing at a time builds the foundation. One knowing at a time builds the structure. So the channel of structuring, again, we are jam-packed right full of information here, you guys. So this is the genius to freak. This is the recognition and the invitation. Individuality, empowerment, knowing, empowerment now. Of course, remember, the mind is over all time, but this particular channel is in the now. This is hearing. This is acoustic. This is the third ear in the 43rd gate. It is an opposition in the wheel, as you can see. It's opposite, and a natural guide to the 3420, which provides it with the energy to be efficient. Expression of metamorphosis from the awareness possibility. Of course, we are looking at the throat, and the throat has a metamorphosis foundation to it. So the voice of the individual, this voice is saying, I know. I know. That doesn't mean that they always actually know. But it says, I know. Or it says, I don't know. Mostly, it says, I know. So, knowing has a problem. The only thing knowing is really good at is knowing that nothing has happened. They are always saying, nothing's happening. There's nothing happening. And everyone around them is occupied with this nothing. The freak knows that if all of these people get stuck in all of this stuff that they are doing, they're totally dead in the water. If nothing new is happening, we are dead. We are designed to be mutative. Now, saying that, I want you to remember that most of the time in the individual wave, we're just coasting along before the inspiration takes over. So the mutations have to come along, and if people are stuck, the knowing is difficult to translate. The voice of the individual, this voice is saying, I know, I know. And that doesn't mean that they know anything. You will know if they know, because they empower you structurally. This is to bring mental efficiency to whatever it is occupied with in their life process. So if they can explain it to you how to be more efficient, they have mutated you. The structuring brings this mutative next building block. So mutating and empowering through the simplicity of the efficiency. New is not comfortable for most people. And if it can't be translated efficiently, they are genius to freaks. So, of course, when we're looking at the individual circuitry, mutation, individuals need to be able to communicate the mutation. And if they can't translate it efficiently, they look like freaks because people don't get it. So the translation of visual pictures of the collective, of formulas and ideas, is a much less difficult process and invited much more than the one of the individual acoustic breakthrough and knowing. The collective is naturally sharing their sequences and patterns, and the translation is more widely accepted. It's visual. For the individual, being invited to explain their insights and breakthrough can empower others. You must learn to wait to be asked for your knowing. If you don't wait, you become ashamed of your knowing because it alienates you, as you never want to be a freak. So what happens here all too often is that these are the children, they're in class and all of a sudden their hand goes up and they're like, I know. Yet when asked to explain, they can't translate it. So remember, it's not that the invitation is coming from the other, that the invitation is coming through the other and through the circumstance. So watch these circumstances. Invitation really is the invitation from the universe. And it just so happens that whomever is in your aura is really just a representation of whatever that invitation is. It's just coming via them. So instead of volunteering your knowing, it's about being invited into your knowing. Because when you're invited in, all of a sudden there's this essence where the other person is able to accept the mutation. They can take the structuring and utilize it, and then you look like a genius. But if you're, providing the breakthrough and providing the assimilation and the structuring outside of the correct timing, all of a sudden you're a freak. So unless they are given an opportunity to explain themselves, the individual is always going to be an outsider. And individuals usually are outsiders anyways. So it's not about putting up your hand and saying, hey, I know. It is about the engagement with the other that invites the knowing. The genius can only emerge when called. So the gift that this kind of mind brings is the possibility for the collective to see that there is another way to make sense out of things. This is the possibility of knowing that is neither rooted in abstract beliefs nor logical formulas. This spontaneous knowing happens in the correct timing for you, and that you can introduce the mutation when it is correct to empower others through invitation. So the 43rd gate, the gate of insight, this is the breakthrough. This is where the sudden awareness of the knowing comes in. This is the third ear. It's acoustic. The knowing may or may not be of value to anyone else. The awareness possibility is resolution, the voice of muse, the inner ear, the inner acoustic mind that is the inner dialogue. And this inner dialogue that suddenly has an awareness. Oh, I know. Whether it can translate this knowing and explain it to another is another thing. If the 23 is not present in the chart, it is critical for this energy to be present so the influence of assimilation and the correct invitation can bring the mutative insight to the other. So I see this actually quite a bit where the 43 is, even though this is an opposition in the wheel, and I also see it a lot where there's just a channel. I also see where the 43 is in the designs by itself with no 23, and these people have a heck of a time being able to translate and communicate their knowing to people. Unless the correct energy is there, unless the correct invitation is there, then all of a sudden they can bring it down and articulate it. But there's an awful bad mental pressure to get that insight out. And remember, this is the invitation. It doesn't matter if you just have one, the 43 or the 23. It's all about an invitation. And it's about being asked, what was your breakthrough? What was your insight into this? What was your knowing? Do you know? Do you know? And then there's almost this challenge for the knower to know. So the individual process is afraid of tomorrow in the 57 and questioning the value of life in the 28. So can I explain myself tomorrow, and will this be of value to the other? These mental questions can only be resolved by paying attention to the invitations that come through the other to express the possibilities the breakthrough can have on the other. Mutation. You are always attracting attention with the individual energy that is here. This attraction can also bring rejection. If you can't explain yourself, you will be rejected. And this is the fear and the anxiety of the mind. As an individual, you must learn how to communicate so that you can develop the skills necessary to explain yourself. What I find really fascinating is I follow a lady that her name is Esther Hicks, and she channels Abraham. I have pulled up her design in the past. It's not coming to mind here right now. But really, that's what channelers do, is they are taking this breakthrough, this insight, this mutative knowing, and they are translating that frequency that comes in through the inner ear. And they're translating that frequency into language to help mutate other people. Now, one of the things that I often hear Abraham communicate through Esther is that they chose Esther because her translation of the message was as clear as it could be. What was almost, identical to what was trying to be processed. So she had the clear translation for the conversation with Abraham. Now, we all have, this energy that's flowing through us that we can then translate. So what is your insight? What's your breakthroughs that come? Whether or not you have this gate, understand that we have everything in the design. Like for me, I'm gaining wisdom here. My husband has the 23, or the 43-23. So, and I have the 34-20. So I watch how that efficiency piece happens as well. I challenge him mentally, and he actually will also then bring efficiency to my work and how I operate. So it's fun to watch how the two of them, they definitely do complement one another. So that's been a fun thing to watch as well. So in order for achievement to be maintained, a new order must be fairly established. That establishes the inherent right of diversity. We are designed for diversity. You hear a lot about, let's unify, let's, come together, let's be one. Well, here's how I see this. We are all designed to have our own unique expression, our own unique experience. We are not designed to unify. We are designed to be separate. We are designed to hold on to our individuality. so that the unified field can come to an expansion. And again, here I am, making things up. I have no idea if that's what it is. I don't know that. But, I look at all of this information and I think, well, what else is there? And I don't know. So the writing across of explanation, this gate is here, explaining your knowing to bring mutation. The juxtaposition of insight, there's access, ponder, and express the insights. The left angle cross of dedication, this is powerful communication that is of value to all individuals. So really the whole piece of this is, let's communicate, let's explain, let's talk about these insights once invited. So always, we know this, first line gives the foundation, patience, the recognition that new forms cannot be established until resistance has been eliminated. The depth necessary to bring into form an individual insight. So the impatience to enjoy the sweets of accomplishment that inevitably leaves a sour taste in the mouth. A reliance on the insight, but a lack of depth to establish it. I'm just going to grab my book here while we are looking at this. So really, breakthrough is patience. Even though the insight happened through you, even though it should say a delight in the insight, but a lack of depth to establish it. So this should say delight. Right there. As individuals, we have to be patient. The collective, they're nervous and scared to really, and fearful and anxiety to have change. The tribe is like, nope, this is the way it is. And they are, totally resistant. Except for those little tiny times that they let in a little bit of mutation. So it's about patience. Those that need to hear and accept will invite that insight from you. The dedication, the maintenance of specialized attitudes which promote breakthrough. So unique mental habits and thought processes which promote insight. A dedication to action that when actualization is in sight may become incautious. The urge for expression that will abandon its normal processes when an opportunity arises. Mental habits. Patience. Dedicate yourself to unique mental habits. And know that patience is the foundation here. And when you can sit in meditation and be in this ability to be connected to your source while you're walking around in the mundane world, and to be, fully watching strategy and authority, witnessing your body move through, all of a sudden that promotes the insight. Because there's no clutter, there's no noise, there's no, trying to bypass the resistance. So dedicate yourself to these healthy mental habits. And then we have expediency, the powerful drive for regeneration that will, when breakthrough is threatened, use any means, align with any force, and ensure any condemnation to achieve the goal. A certainty in knowing which can withstand condemnation. An oversensitivity to condemnation that may preclude justified expediency and result in failure. Individual insight abandoned in the face of condemnation. Ra uses the example of human design. Like people were condemning him continuously and saying he was crazy to bring this out. But he knew what he knew. He had the knowing. And there was an expediency there. He was, there was a certainty in his knowing. So he was able to withstand the condemnation. So the fourth line, the one-track mind. The over-reliance and stubborn obsession with one's mental abilities in the face of reoccurring obstacles. This design, given mercurial mental gifts like Mercury, though rarely succeed. A stubborn reliance on one's unique insights that demands focused mental ability to be properly. A belief in inherent right based on limited knowledge that shuns advice. So the vanity to attempt to be properly conceptualized. Fourth line beings are very fixed beings. When we look at the juxtaposition, that's a 4-1. Like, they're very, they're the bridge. They're very solid. They have to be very fixed because they're basically bridging the lower trigram to the higher trigram. So they're bridging the 1, 2, and 3 over to the 5 and the 6. So they're very one-tracked. So they can become quite stubborn. And then we have the progression. So the step-by-step adaptation to relationships which hinder breakthrough through practical actions which will not jeopardize eventual success. The gift to knowing when a unique insight can be shared effectively with others. So a tendency to concentrate on harmonizing relationship that tends to strengthen the position of restrictive forms rather than benefiting breakthrough. An over-reliance on the receptivity of others that turns harmony into the conditioner of individual expression. So again, when I look here at this hexagram, we have this foundation of patience. And that foundation of patience is saying, listen, in order for us to universalize, there's a progression that needs to happen. Even though the inspiration came, the mutation came, and the knowing comes through you, it may take time for that knowing to absorb into the collective or the tribe. So it really is, you need to get good at speaking, communicating, and expressing this knowing. Because if you're not good at it, people aren't going to be able to get it. They will not be patient with you. They will not dedicate themselves to listening to it. You'll drive them crazy. So there's a progression, timing. And then 6, the breakthrough, so the actualization and centering that in breakthrough naturally establish both internally and externally a new order. Unique knowing that is both personally and collectively of value. So all of a sudden now we're bringing in the collective. Because all knowing is designed, it is totally designed to, bring a mutation to the collective and the tribe. But they don't want it. So we need to be patient. We need to, have expediency to know what we know and withstand the condemnation. And know that there's a progression. We can dedicate ourselves to that. And if needed, we can, have these focused mental abilities to bring out this certainty. So an ego tendency that in breakthrough sees justification of its lesser attributes and carry them over into the new order, where the value of knowing is more important than other aspects of life. So now let's look at the 23. And again, most of the time you will see the 43-23 because it is that opposition. So the 56 and the 62 are translating vision into language. So the moving image translates ideas and stimulation into a story that makes sense. The patterned image of the opinions and details that gives names to and brings logical understanding. The 23rd gate is the translator, but the 43 is not visual. It's that third ear again. It is like a mental diaphragm. It is how you consciously relate to it. It is that it sounds like a voice. Your voice, the inside voice that you are hearing with this inner ear. So taking this inner ear hearing and translating it into language. And it is difficult to get someone else to know. This gate can explain the parameters, but can never really explain what the mutation was really like. So the individual is always an outsider. The collective wants status quo, and the tribe wants submission to their ways. So neither want mutation, especially if the mutation is not explainable. So the voice of I know is also the voice of I don't know. This is not about I believe or I think. This is I know. So if it says I know, you had better be able to explain yourself, or you will be rejected as a freak. So the tribe and the collective are both moralistic. The individual process is amoral. It's not right. It's not wrong. It is what one knows. It is simply different. So individuals are seeking acceptance. It will always attract attention because it is different and brings mutation, which can easily be rejected if not explained. So the reality is that individuals are simply different, and this is not good nor bad. It is simply different. And again, what I should actually pop in and say here is the 43, that's the anxiety, is that it will be rejected. That's the anxiety, that it'll be rejected and it'll be reprimanded because it cannot explain its knowing. So it's constantly stressed out, anxious about being rejected. So the 23, again, this amorality, the awareness and understanding which leads to the acceptance of diversity. So we have, again, the right angle cross of explanation. So this communicating with a wide array of people to inform and explain the knowing, the juxtaposition of assimilation, so you impart your knowing on others. The right angle cross of dedication, insights are expressed for the benefit of the whole. So when we move through, I hope I can say this word properly. So we have proselytization. And what that really is that you're trying to convince people of what you know. So the attempt to undermine one set of values for the other. So the sage who is in the extreme can defend evil as part of the greater good, the powerful expression of insight which will undermine established values. The missionary who's very light will bring darkness, the powerful expression of an insight which will produce negative effects. Again, remember, this is what's so important, is that mutation can be looked at as good and mutation could be looked at as bad because it's different. So there can be positive or negatives to the mutation. You know, like let's take, just for fun, let's look at radiation. Here we have these nuclear plants. The energy is very efficient. However, when something goes wrong with that nuclear plant, the radiation is detrimental. Like, from what I understand, we're in 2020, and there's still radiation being spewed out into the ocean by Japan. What's that doing to our world, to our planet? I don't know. Probably not good. So the second is self-defense, the need to abandon tolerance when survival is threatened. The principle of preservation at its most acute, the abandonment of tolerance when individual expression is threatened. Where Jupiter will strike out to preserve its integrity, the moon is often satisfied with just protecting itself by fending off hostility. The defense of individual expression in the face of hostility. So, these are the people that are, looked at, I know. So the key to this defense of the individual is that it will get its full quality when it resonates to the fifth line, where the individual process can then be universalized in the assimilation process. Second lines are always projected outwards. Other people see this projection outwards, and these people are, mentally defensive. They can become very mentally defensive. Because really they've said, I know, and then they can't explain themselves. And they're reprimanded. So the thing that is so important here is that you actually know your knowing so that you can communicate your knowing. Then we have the 3, the individuality. This is the independent expression that is not by its nature detrimental to others. This really is the epitome of the individual circuitry, that we can explain ourselves. So vitality and personal power that can engender jealousy but not threat. Individual expression which attracts attention but not threat. That's the whole thing right there. We are attracting attention when we are individuals. That's important to us. So an individual mysteriousness that attracts active suspicion and threat, the freak. So the individual expression that attracts suspicion and threat. 4, the fragmentation, diversification without a perceived potential for synthesis. Fatalism and egoism and damn the consequences. Individual expression which has no collective value. And the atheism and the paranoia, individual expression which engenders isolation and fear. So we always can look at this 4th line and recognize, these are the one-track mind, these are the single-track mind people. They are very fixed, and they can be very fragmented. It may not be of value to anybody what they are externalizing. And it can be very fragmented, meaning like you're talking about one thing and like poof, like squirrel, and then all of a sudden they're bringing in something else. And it may not have any value at all to the conversation. The 5, this assimilation, the practical acceptance of the values of another's path. So the expansion and contribution through assimilation, the gift of communication, individual insight to the collective. So motive-driven assimilation from an inferior position for protection and nourishment. Motive-driven assimilation for acceptance and protection for the collective. So again, the whole point of this is to actually communicate the mutation. The splitting apart. This is really, understanding that this is amoral. This is not good. This is not bad. We are, we have this diversity. We are designed to be diverse. And basically, we are splitting apart from the collective. We are assimilating our knowing and communicating it. So the fusion in the 6th line, the gradual attunement of diversity through synthesis, the exponential growth of energy and its power of assertion, engendered by fusion, individual knowing, which brings diversity to synthesis, the principled but futile withdrawal from fusion that leads to atrophy, individual knowing that holds onto diversity and loses its power and expression. The 6th line's always looking out. It's always looking out, and, can we fuse together the knowing to create the structure, to create the structuring that needs to happen in this channel? And the only way to do that is through patience. So, we are now going to move on to the centering and the integration. So the centering circuitry, which is a minor circuit, and then the integration channel, which is the backbone to humanity. So I just want you to recognize this information and just see who in your world do you know has the 4323. Do you understand how individual their mind is? Do a little bit of challenging towards them so that they can know their knowing. Because that's what an individual wants. They want to be challenged to know the knowing. They don't want to be rejected. They don't, it's hard to be that individual because the mutation that's coming through these people is so profound. And yet, most of the collective doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So again, if you have this, recognize it in yourself, how it shows up. If you don't have this and you want to watch it play out in the world, Ra is an excellent example of this. His mental process and his structuring and his ability to bring in the mutation based off of, he knew what he knew. And what he didn't know, he didn't know. What was important for him to know, and he also knew what was not important for him to know. All right, friends, until the next vid.